Chapter 5. There were 6 large gray tents. Each one had a black letter on it. A, B, C, D, or F. The first 5 tents were for the campers. The counselor slept in F. Stanley was assigned to D tent. Mr. Budinsky was his counselor. "My name is easy to remember," said Mr. Budinsky, as he shook hands with Stanley, just outside the tent. 3 easy words: pin, dance, and key. Mr. Sir returned to the office. Mr. Budinsky was younger than Mr. Sir, and not nearly as scary looking. The top of his head was shaved so close it was almost bald, but his face was covered in thick, curly, black beard. His nose was badly sunburned. "Mr. Sir isn't really so bad," said Mr. Budinsky. "He's just been in a bad mood ever since he quit smoking. The person you got to worry about is the warden. There is really one rule at Camp Green Lake. Don't upset the warden." Stanley nodded, as if he understood. "I want you to know, Stanley, that I respect you," Mr. Budinsky said. "I understand you made some bad mistakes in your life. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. But everyone makes mistakes. You may have done something bad, but that doesn't mean you're a bad kid." Stanley nodded. It seemed pointless to try and tell his counselor that he was innocent. He figured that everyone probably said that. He didn't want Mr. Budinsky to think he had a bad attitude. "I'm going to help you turn your life around," said the counselor. "But you're going to have to help too. Can I count on your help?" "Yes, sir," Stanley said. Mr. Budinsky said good and patted Stanley on the back. 2 boys, each carrying a shovel, were coming across the compound. Mr. Budinsky called to them. "Rex and Alan, I want you to come and say hello to Stanley. He's the newest member of our team." The boys glanced wearily at Stanley. They were dripping with sweat, and their faces were so dirty that it took Stanley a moment to notice that one kid was white and the other black. What happened to Barfbag?" asked the black kid. "Lewis is still in the hospital," said Mr. Budinsky. "He won't be returning." He told the boys to come shake Stanley's hand and introduce themselves, like gentlemen. "Hi," the white kid grunted. "That's Alan," said Mr. Budinsky. "My name's not Alan," the boy said. "It's Squid, and that's X-Ray." "Hey," said X-Ray. He smiled and shook Stanley's hand. He wore glasses, but they were so dirty that Stanley wondered how he could see out of them. Mr. Budinsky told Alan to go to the rec hall and bring the other boys to meet Stanley. Then he led them inside the tent. There were 7 cots, each one less than 2 feet away from the one next to them. "Which was Louis' cot?" Mr. Budinsky asked. Barfbag slept here," said X-Ray, kicking at one of the beds. "All right, Stanley, that'll be yours," said Mr. Budinsky. Stanley looked at the cot and nodded. He wasn't particularly thrilled about sleeping in the same cot that had been used by somebody named Barfbag. 7 crates were stacked in 2 piles at one side of the tent. The open end of the crates faced forward. Stanley put his backpack, changed of clothes, towels, and what was used to be Barfbag's crate. It was at the bottom of the stack that had 3 in it. Squid returned with 4 of the boys. The first 3 were introduced by Mr. Budinsky as Jose, Theodore, and Ricky. They called themselves Magnet, Armpit, and Zigzag. "They all have nicknames," explained Mr. Budinsky. "However, I prefer to use their names their parents gave them, the names that society will recognize them by, which, when they return to, become useful and hard-working members of society." "It ain't just nicknames," X-Ray told Mr. Budinsky. He tapped the rim of his glasses. "I can see inside you, Mom. You got a big fat heart." The last boy either didn't have a real name, or else he didn't have a nickname. Both Mr. Budinsky and X-Ray called him Zero. "You know why his name is Zero?" asked Mr. Budinsky. "Because there's nothing inside his head." He smiled and playfully shook Zero's shoulder. Zero said nothing. "And that's Mom," a boy said. Mr. Budinsky smiled at him. "If it makes you feel better to call me Mom, Theodore, go ahead and call me Mom." He turned to Stanley. "If you have a question, Theodore will help you. You got that? Theodore, I'm depending on you." Theodore spit a thin line of saliva between his teeth, causing some of the other boys to complain about the need to keep their home sanitary. "We're all new here once," said Mr. Budinsky, "and you all know what it feels like. I'm counting on every one of you to help Stanley." Stanley looked at the ground. Mr. Budinsky left the tent, and soon the other boys began to file out as well, taking their towels and change of clothes with them. Stanley was relieved to be left alone, but he was so thirsty he felt as if he would die if he didn't get something to drink. "Hey, Theodore," he said, going after him. "Do you know where I can fill my canteen?" Theodore wheeled and grabbed Stanley by the collar. "My name's not Theodore," he said. "It's Armpit." He threw Stanley to the ground. Stanley stared up at him, terrified. "There's a water spigment on the wall of the shower stall." "Thanks, Armpit," said Stanley. As he watched the boy turn and walked away, he couldn't for the life of him figure out why anyone would want to be called Armpit. In a way, it made him feel a little bit better about having to sleep in a cot that had been used by somebody named Barfbag. Maybe it was a term of respect.